Welcome to Your Questions Answered. You have been sending in plenty of questions on the cost of living and the rise in inflation, and it is clear that many of you want to know more about the support that is available to you and how you can cope with the squeeze in living standards. So we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can. And to answer those questions, I'm joined by the BBC's cost of living correspondent, Kevin Peachey, and also Judith Wood-Archer from the Citizens Advice Bureau in Gateshead. Welcome to you both. Well, let's just take a look at what are some of the most searched for answers online to the big economic questions at the moment. First of all, let's take a look at some of the most searched for queries, perhaps unsurprisingly, many about the energy price cap. People are searching on when the rebate payments are due. They want to know how the energy price cap works and perhaps after some scary newspaper headlines, how high energy prices could go. Well, let's answer some of those questions first of all. Judith, first of all, on the energy rebates, what is the answer to that question about when the rebate payments are due?
So rebate payments, people should have received those already in October, and the next set of rebate payments are due in November. They're coming, it's a £400 rebate, and they're coming in equal payments through your bill. If you're a direct debit customer, it should come through your bill. Prepayment customers should be getting it added to their prepayment card or fob, whatever they use normally.
How does the energy price cap work? Because the government policy has changed in terms of how long it goes on for. So yeah, bring us up to date.
Yeah, so the energy price cap is, it's really important to understand that this talk of £2,500 or £4,000 come April is an average bill. The energy price cap itself is applied to a unit cost that you use as your electricity or your gas amount of money. So the price cap caps that unit cost, not the actual amount of your bill.
So on that then, I mean, how high could energy bills go? That's what people are worrying about.
The energy bill themselves could go as high as they can, depending on how much energy you use. So the more energy you use, the higher your bill will go. So the average household bill will be around £2,500, but if you take measures to use less energy as best you can without affecting your health or your well-being, then you can bring it a lot lower than that.
A lot of questions around mortgages.
Yeah.
Should I get a new mortgage now is a popular question.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Getting a new mortgage is outside of my experience and area of expertise. I don't know if Kevin can sort of talk to that a bit further, but my advice is to go and seek some advice from a professional.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not going to tell you when to get a mortgage, clearly. But what we have seen is the statement by Jeremy Hunt, the new Chancellor, just earlier this week, was designed to settle the markets, designed to settle that cost of government borrowing, and that feeds through to the cost of our fixed mortgages. And what we've seen is that cost really shot. It's been going up all year, but then shot up after the mini budget, and has levelled off a bit. We haven't seen it come down yet because it's not an immediate effect. So we would all love to know the future, of course, but I think it's safe to say there is an expectation that at least the rise in those fixed mortgage costs is going to at least level off and possibly come down again. Remember, if you're on a variable rate or a tracker deal, then that will reflect what the Bank of England does, and it just in a few days' time we'll hear the latest from the Bank of England, which is expecting to put up the benchmark rate, the bank rate, even further. So that will affect just over 1 million or so mortgage holders.
Why are interest rates rising?
Well, it is true that this is a global issue. So across the world, there are rates have been rising, and that's a lot to do with inflation, which we've seen today, 10.1% in the UK, expected to peak at 11%. Clearly, the best and the biggest part of the Bank of England's armoury to try and bring inflation, the rising cost of living, down to its target of 2% is to raise interest rates. Something that's been seen across the world, and clearly that has an impact on all of our personal finances.
When and will interest rates fall?
Well, they're expected to peak at 11%, so we haven't quite hit the top yet. But the expectation is that then they fall away. But one really important point is that's inflation.
I was going to say, my mind is going into overdrive. Interest rates 11%.
Exactly,
haven't heard that before.
So that's inflation.
Okay.
That's prices going up, and clearly it's when interest rates are trying to counter that, and that's the interest rates have been rising, and we don't know, but we think it's going to be longer than previously anticipated that those rates will be high.
So in terms of top interest rates, I mean, you spooked us all by saying 11%.
Yes,
not going to go that high.
Yes. So no, we're talking 11% on in terms of the rate of price rises, and obviously we're seeing rates at a higher level than we've seen for some time.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the kind of most searched for questions. Let's get some specific ones from viewers. Bassam Al-Mouri asks, when inflation settles and comes down, would current prices stick or come down? In other words, are these new higher prices permanent? That's a really good question, isn't it?
It's a really good question, and a really, really important question, because we hear about inflation, the rising cost of living, and we hear that it may well settle down. But remember, those price rises that you're feeling now are baked in, if you like. They're baked into the figures. So if inflation, say, comes down to 5%, to 2%, it doesn't mean that prices are falling. It means that the rate of increase is slowing. So we will still feel those higher prices, but the rate of increase will be slowing. So the prices you see in the shops won't necessarily be falling, it's just the rise will slow.
Okay. Question for you here, Judith, from Sarah in Norwich. How long will it take for Jeremy Hunt's action to bring down... Actually, I can't ask you this because it's about mortgage rates, and you've already said that's not your specialist subject. So I'm going to ask you, Kevin. We'll come to you for one in a minute. A question from Sarah. How long will it take for Jeremy Hunt's action to bring down mortgage rates? She says her mortgage is about to go up by 60%.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's not an immediate effect on that, and we're seeing rates at a typical 2-year fixed rate mortgage at 6.5%. That's something we haven't seen for 14 years. It won't be immediate, the fall. We'll have to wait and see if and when it does come. But as I say before, I think the expectation is that the rises that we've seen will slow, if not stop.
Same question from two people here, John and Raymond. As a pensioner, am I going to get any help with the cost of living increase other than the energy price cap?
There is some further money that's coming to pensioners, depending on whether you're on the the winter fuel payment. So if you're on the winter fuel payments, then you can get an extra £300 for your household, which would be paid with your normal payment from November 2022, and that's in addition to any cost of living money. But for pensioners, I would say get a benefit check and make sure that you're on the right benefits, that you're getting everything you're entitled to, which then may passport you into these sorts of cost of living payments in the future.
How do you get a benefit check?
Go and get advice from a professional. If you're able to access things online, then on Citizens Advice website we have a number of benefit checks that you can use yourself, or access your local service, either a Citizens Advice or another advice agency. Some councils do their own advice services.
Is it quite common that people are entitled to benefits that they don't even realise?
Absolutely it is. I was just looking at a case study yesterday, and somebody was struggling with paying their bills. We did a benefit check, and they've got entitlement to personal independence payment, and so we're helping them to apply for that now.
And I think there's an estimated 850,000 people who are entitled to pension credit. Remember, that's a top up to your state pension, right. and a gateway to some of those other payments that we mentioned. That's still going unclaimed. So 850,000 people is a lot of people.
Yeah. And what's it worth? And what do they need? What's the sort of broad brush for how someone knows whether they're eligible or not?
So this is low-income pensioners, a bit of a top-up to your state pension, it's really important, I guess, here for the work of family and friends, because they're the ones who are probably going to say, "Oh, hang on a minute, maybe you can claim this benefit," because let's face it, it is a confusing picture, and that's why people like Judith spend a lot of time with people going, line by line through their finances, through their budgets, to try and and work out what they're entitled to.
So if someone's watching at home and they think it might apply to one of their loved ones, they should be kind of asking those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking
It's a
about
really
that.
complex system, and you know, we're trained to help with that. So yeah, absolutely.
And we should also mention, before moving on to the next question as well, we now know that the pension is going to go up in line with the rate of inflation. That's been confirmed today.
That's
It was
good
confirmed before. It was taken away. It's back again
Good
now.
news.
So that at
I
least
can
has
tell
been
you
confirmed.
actually in pounds and pence what that means. So if you receive the new state pension, so that's people who've retired since April 2016, your weekly payment's going to go to just above £200. If you're on the old state pension, your weekly payment going up to about £156. So that's what you're going to get, and as I say, there's a bit of clarity after a lot of speculation in the last few days.
Thank you for those questions, John and Raymond. I hope lots of helpful advice there arising from those. Jack Lord says the cost of living seems to be higher in my area than in others. Is the rise in prices uniform across the country? Interesting. What's the sense on that one?
No, it's not uniform across the country. Certainly with energy providers, depending on where you live, you can be charged different rates. Obviously everybody's at the price cap now, but it does vary.
Different rates for energy?
Yeah,
Depending on
it
your
has done
geography?
until the price cap came in, yeah, absolutely.
Why?
I think it's to do with the way that the energy comes to you as a final end consumer. Prices also are different within shops. You can see it if you go to, there's particular brands where you might go to a shop that's in one area of your town, you go to the same brand in a different area of your town, they might be charging different prices.
Again, why?
Because they can, Joanna.
They can. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, we all see it, but
yeah,
it is
absolutely.
It's always worth asking why is that happening?
You know, it's particularly in rural areas where you're stuck with that one particular shop. You've got no other way of getting anywhere else. You might be a pensioner on a low income. You've got no other way of shopping anywhere else. Then that's what you're stuck with. You can't go to the discounters and what have you because you don't have a vehicle to take you there. You can't necessarily afford the delivery charges. But they do charge different prices in different shops.
And it's not just the geography that affects it as well, it's your personal circumstances. So if you're on a low income, then actually it's likely, given that it's the essentials at the moment that are really driving the rising cost of living, food, fuel, energy, that actually your personal inflation rate's likely to be higher if you are on a lower income. And actually we've got a calculator on the BBC website where we can put in some of your details and see, give some kind of estimate as to where your personal inflation rate is.
And also there's tailored guidance for people as well in terms of what they can look out for to help their own situation on the website if they put in their
absolutely
details.
A whole host of stuff on there today.
Adrian York, my PIP benefit has been cut by nearly £1,300. I've cut back on everything I can. How am I supposed to get by?
The first thing I say to Adrian is get some advice. It's never too late to, I mean, it obviously depends on when the decision was made to cut his personal independence payment benefit, but I would say get some advice, find out if it can be challenged. The decisions by the DWP can always be challenged. He potentially has up to 13 months in which to do that. And for ourselves in Citizens Advice Gateshead, we have a running rate ourselves of 80% success of these benefits that have been turned down or altered. When we come along and we help people to challenge those decisions, our success rate is 80% of those are overturned and people get their benefits put back in place. So I strongly suggest that he gets advice.
So I'm going to ask the why question again. Why is it that people have to go through that process and end up with they have as a final outcome? Because if they didn't come to you, they wouldn't get that.
No, they wouldn't. And it's about people not understanding how to fill in their form in the first place, perhaps, you know. So anybody who's thinking about applying now, get help in applying in the first place so that you get the detail that's needed on the form correct. And then making sure that you've got gathering the right sort of medical evidence, because in order to consider your disability, they need to understand your disability, and the best way of doing that is by presenting some medical evidence from a medical professional.
So these forms are complex, aren't they?
Absolutely.
A lot of the time.
Yeah,
so it's always good to get some
40 odd pages
guidance.
long, a PIP form.
How many?
40 odd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guidance is good.
Yeah.
Support is good. Always ask questions and get some help. Let's talk about ISAs. Tony Fenlon wants to know about savings. Will there be better saving rates available in the next few months?
Again, difficult to tell what the future will hold, but I guess there's a bit of good news here, really, because savers for a decade have been living, as everybody has, with a period of very low interest rates, very little return on their savings. But there's a bit more competition about now. Those rates have risen. Now, that's the good news. There's the idea that you can shop around a bit more now for a decent savings rate, or a better savings rate, much better than if you just left it in an account. And there are lots of them which pay very little or no interest. That said, back to inflation, rising cost of living, that eats away at any savings that you have. The buying power of those savings is obviously lower because prices are rising. So I've given you a bit of good news, but maybe a little bit of a cloud there too.
Yeah, and the other part of that picture is people are spending their savings often on the basics because they're having to find the extra money in any way that they can. Have you got any figures on what's happening with savings on that front?
No, to be honest, but of course, we simplify this sometimes, don't we, to savers and borrowers. But of course, most people are savers and borrowers. So while they might be getting a little more return on their savings, they're also facing higher mortgage costs or higher costs on their personal loans. So we all ourselves have quite complex financial situations, as has the nation as a whole.
Judy asks, do we know why the government scaled back its help with energy bills, or what will happen after next April? What will happen after next April? We know there's going to be a review.
Yeah, we know there's going to be a review. It's looking like it's going to be a means-tested review. So for people on low incomes, potentially will get the help that's needed, rather this blanket approach that's happening at the moment, where everybody gets the same amount of money on the discount of their energy bills. So that's as much as I know. I don't know if Kevin's got more to add to that.
Well, what we do know is some forecasts about how high those typical energy bills go, and as Judy said, really important to stress, this is a typical bill for a typical usage, not what you can pay more than that. Or less, exactly. So Cornwall Insight, the consultants, saying that in April could be an annual bill could be £4,350 odd pounds. Next winter, £3,700 a year. Now, forecasts are obviously dependent so much on events, and as we've seen for the last year, there can be huge swings in what happens to your energy bills. When we compare our energy bills now to where they were a year ago, well, it's about £1,200 for that typical bill a year ago.
We had no idea it was going to be like this.
Exactly, and then global events obviously are a big factor in this as well.
John Roberts, millions of people rely on heating oil to heat their homes. Why isn't the government doing more to help them?
They're getting some help. Why the government? I can't answer the why. I can give you the what if I can find my notes, but
£100.
£100, thank you. Yeah, so the people who are not with the traditional gas and electric are getting £100 in terms of rebate. Why it's less? I guess that's policy that they've made a decision about.
Right. What's happening with heating oil costs?
Well, really, they are going up. They fluctuates quite a lot, but going up, and that hence the £100 support. But a really important issue in Northern Ireland, whereas about 68% of the population are on heating oil, often in rural areas. So it's a really key issue there, and it's been watched very closely, because one would imagine that again is part of this Treasury review as to what's going to happen in April.
Yeah.
Clive Brown, am I correct in assuming that if the Chancellor freezes the personal allowance for income tax, then the 10% increase will only be 8% in real terms?
Right, I'm going to do the calculator in my head. Might take a while. Look, what we can say is that obviously you have some toing and froing on income tax rates and whether it's going to be cut or not. Now we're back to it's not going to be cut. But what we do know is that the thresholds at which you pay the different rates of income tax have been frozen, and so It's what it's in the economy is called fiscal drag, which actually means, as you get a pay rise, you move into a higher income tax threshold. Could be clearly that you could be paying more in income tax, even if effectively you've done nothing differently, really. So that's why that question's being answered. Take us a little bit longer to do the sums on that one.
Thank you, Kevin and Judith. Thank you. I mean, what's absolutely clear is so many of you have so many questions, and lots of difficult choices are being made. And what we're hearing there is a lot of advice out there if you need it. So you can go on the BBC News website. There's all sorts of signposting for advice, and there are also some tools that mean that you can put in your personal details and work out what your personal situation is and where there might be some help available that you perhaps didn't know about. Thank you for your questions. We're going to stay here in Sunderland throughout the rest of the afternoon looking at the cost of living and its impact.